Welcome to the channel Listen and Sleep. Tonight is a special evening, one of those when there is nowhere to go, when all you need to do is lie down. Let the body sink into the darkness and listen. If you have been with us recently, you may remember a conversation about the force sleeping at the very root, the one that for thousands of years was called coiled, dormant, waiting. Tonight is not about that force. Tonight is about the path it might travel, and about what lives along that path, about the 7 gates that the ancients saw inside the human body. We will move slowly, step by step, from the bottom upward, like travelers in no hurry, for whom the road matters more than the destination. Close your eyes if you have not already. Feel the weight of your body, how it presses into the bed, how each muscle lets go just a little, how the silence in the room grows a little thicker, a little warmer. There it is, your body, in the dark, at rest, and inside it, right now, in this very moment, something is happening that people have contemplated for thousands of years. Imagine for a moment, not the body as a single vessel, but as 7 vessels, stacked one on top of the other. 7 cups, one above the next, along the spine. At the bottom, the heaviest, the densest, like stone, like the earth beneath the roots of an old tree. Higher, a little lighter, more fluid, more mobile. And so, step by step, growing thinner, growing more transparent, all the way to the topmost, which has almost no weight at all, which is like air before dawn, like light that has not yet become the sun. 7 worlds, and all of them already inside you. This is not a poetic image. This is a map, one of the oldest maps that people ever drew, looking not at the sky and not at the earth, but inward into themselves. A map of the subtle body, a map of what the eye cannot see, but what is felt by the one who knows how to listen. In Sanskrit, the language spoken by sages, hermits, and tantrics thousands of years ago, there is a word for these 7 centers: chakra, from a verb meaning to spin, a wheel, a circle, a vortex, something that moves on its own, always, continuously, without needing you to remember. Chakra. Say this word silently to yourself. Feel how it is made. Light at the beginning, firm in the middle, and open at the end. There is another word, Padma, lotus, because each of these 7 centers was seen by the ancients as a flower, open and facing upward, a flower floating on water, roots in the mud, in the depths, the stem in the water, the flower itself on the surface, open to the sky. This is how the human body appears in this tradition, rooted in the earth, living in water and fire, opening toward heaven. Each of the 7 lotuses has its own color, its own number of petals, its own sound, its own density, and its own quality of life. One is like wet sand after rain, another like an orange sunset over a river, a third like golden flame in a hearth, and higher, higher, thinner, until you dissolve into something for which there are no more words. This is not a metaphysics you must take on faith. It is a map of experience, a map made by those who knew how to remain in silence for a long time and observe what happens to the body when a person is frightened, what happens when they fall in love, what happens when they are still and calm, what happens when they sing, or are silent, or weep, or move forward in spite of everything. They noticed. They wrote things down. They passed it on by word of mouth, hand to hand, from teacher to student. Now, 1,000 years later, you lie in the darkness and breathe, and these 7 worlds are working in you right now, not because you are doing anything, but because you are alive. The body breathes on its own. The heart beats on its own. Blood moves, warmth distributes itself. Something in the chest opens or tightens. Something in the belly gathers or releases. All of this happens without your involvement, without effort, like wheels turning as long as there is movement of life. You do not need to start them. You do not need to fix them. You can simply notice that they are here, that they are working, that in your body these 7 worlds are already present: earth, water, fire, wind, ether, light, and the limitless. Tonight's story is long, unhurried. We will pass through all 7 stages. We will learn how they were seen and described across the span of thousands of years. What images, what sounds, what elements are connected to each one, and how they already live in you right now, as you lie in the darkness and listen to this voice. There is no need to remember anything. There is no need to do anything. Only listen. Only allow the words to pass through, like water through sand. Sometimes the most important things enter not through the mind, but through something else, through the body, which recognizes, yes, this is mine, through the breath, which suddenly becomes a little deeper, through the sensation of warmth where a moment ago there was simply a place. The journey of 7 steps begins not with the first step. It begins with the decision to walk at all, with the moment you stopped long enough to notice, beneath the noise and the hurry, something else, something quiet, something that never went anywhere while you were busy. It is here. It always was here. 7 gates, 7 worlds, and you, a traveler who tonight will pass through them slowly, without effort, the way you walk through the halls of a sleeping temple, quietly, with the lantern of attention in your hand, noticing that each hall is alive, that each one breathes. But before approaching the first of them, there is something important to understand. Where did this map come from? Who made it? And why it was drawn again and again for nearly 1,000 years? Where this map came from, and why it was drawn for 1,000 years. This question is worth lingering over, the way you linger at the threshold of an old house before stepping inside. Imagine a small room, more like a cell, walls of unfired clay, darkened with time. The single window is covered with oiled cloth, and through it a dim light seeps. Outside, wind. It comes from the north, from the mountains, carrying with it the cold of high mountain passes. A lamp is burning, small like a shallow dish, a wick of twisted cotton floating in mustard oil. The light it gives is trembling, warm, almost alive. And in that light, a man. He is bent over a broad palm leaf. The pen in his hand moves slowly, each sign like a breath. He is copying what he received from his teacher, and the teacher what he received from his own. And so, generation after generation, word by word, image by image. This is exactly how the ancient maps of the body were preserved. Not in libraries, not in stone archives, in the hands of scribes, in the memory of students, in quiet cells smelling of lamp oil and dry palm leaves. These texts were not meant for everyone. They were passed from teacher to student, from initiate to initiate. And each copy, a little different, each school, a little its own way. This is why there were many maps. The first hints of a system of inner centers appear in the later Upanishads, not the earliest ones, which speak of Brahman and Atman in the broadest sense, but those that came later, in texts that turned toward the body, toward the breath, toward the channels through which life force flows. Hints, just hints, a few verses, a few images, as if someone is only beginning to draw a map, not yet knowing how many cities will appear on it. More detail came in the texts of Hatha Yoga. There was a separate conversation about this. It is a direction that worked above all with the body, with posture, with breath, with inner fire. The first fully developed descriptions of the centers came from there. The Gorakshashataka, one of the early texts of the Nath lineage. The great Gorakshanath, who lived, according to tradition, somewhere in the first millennium, laid the foundation. His school did not merely describe the body. It created a map of it, point by point, node by node. The Shiva Samhita, another text of the same tradition. It describes in detail the channels through which prana moves, and the centers where these channels meet. There is already a system there. There is already an inner anatomy that no scalpel can reveal. But that can be felt if you know where to direct your attention. Tantric guides added their own layer. The Sharada Tilaka, one such text. In it, each center acquires an image, a color, a sound, a number of petals, the name of the deity who lives within it. This is no longer just a map of roads. This is a map with inhabited places. And above all these layers of layers, one text that is regarded as the most complete, the most detailed to have reached us. The Shat Chakra Nirupana, which translates as the investigation of the 6 wheels. It was written by the sage Purnananda in the 16th century. The 16th century is already quite close to us by the measure of history. It is the era of the Mughal Empire, the flourishing of Indian classical arts, a time of great synthesis. And it was then that someone decided to gather everything known about the inner map of the body into a single treatise, to describe each of the 6 main centers with such precision that later generations would need no corrections. The title, 6 Wheels, 6, not 7, because the 7th center, Sahasrara, stands apart. It is not simply the next in the row. It is above the row. There will be a separate conversation about it when the time comes. For a long time, the West knew nothing of this map. The palm leaves remained in cells, in monasteries, in private collections of those who had received initiation, until in the early 20th century, an English judge serving in India became a student. His name was Sir John Woodroffe. He took the teaching name Arthur Avalon, and in 1919 he published a book he called The Serpent Power. It contained a translation of the Shat Chakra Nirupana and a detailed commentary, the first serious introduction of the Western reader to this system. The book appeared, and it was no longer possible to act as if these maps did not exist. It found its way into the hands of researchers, doctors, poets, artists, then to those who were simply searching, and it moved on into translations, commentaries, new interpretations, sometimes faithful, sometimes simplified almost beyond recognition. But here is what matters. The map was changing long before Woodroffe. It was always changing. In some schools, there were 5 centers. In others, 9. There were systems with 4, with 6, with 12. Each tradition drew its own. 7, the one that spread most widely, perhaps because it is convenient. 7 elements, 7 stages, 7 levels of experience, or perhaps because those who traveled it with attention found again and again something that matched what they were experiencing from within. This is an important thought. It is worth holding. The texts did not simply describe inner centers. They gave visualization. Each center, with its own color, its own number of petals, its own syllable to be repeated, its own image. This is not an academic description of anatomy. This is an instruction for practice, a map one walks along. One does not read it. One lives it. Modern medicine looks at these places in the body and sees nerve plexuses, sacral, lumbar, solar, cardiac, cervical. And this does not contradict the tradition, but it does not exhaust it either. Because a map of experience is a different kind of thing from a map of anatomy. One says what is there, the other, what happens there when you are alive. Thousands of years of observation, thousands of people who sat in silence, directed their attention inward, and recorded, each in their own way, what they found. The scribe in his cell knew this. His hand moved slowly. The lamp trembled. The wind drove clouds over the dark mountains. And he wrote, because he believed what he was preserving was not merely words, but a map of the road home. Now this map is ours, or belongs to those who decide to walk it. But before approaching the first of the chakras, we need to see what holds them together, what connects them to one another. That invisible thread without which no bead stays in place. Before approaching the first of the chakras, we need to see what holds them together, what connects them to one another. And this connecting force is not a thread, not bone, not muscle. It is 3 rivers, 3 streams that flow inside the body, the way water flows underground, invisibly, silently, but unstoppably. Imagine a forest at dawn, still dark, but not quite. The sky in the east has begun to lighten. The birds are still silent. Only water, murmuring somewhere between the roots, quiet and persistent. This is the first sound you hear when you wake in such a forest. Not wind, not leaves, water. At the very heart of this forest stands a tree, very old. So old it is difficult to tell where it ends and where the earth begins. Its roots spread in every direction, and between them, small streams, bright, almost transparent. But this tree has 3 trunks, 3 living trunks rising from a single base, and they do not spread apart. They go side by side, upward. This is exactly how the ancient masters described their inner body. 3 channels, 3 nadis, 3 streams of prana, of life force, flowing through the body from the base to the crown. The central trunk is Sushumna. It is straight, stable, almost still, like an axis. It runs exactly along the spine, from its very base to the top of the skull. Sushumna is usually silent. Energy does not always travel through it, only in certain moments, in deep meditation, in a flash of acute clarity, in that rare state when the mind stops wandering and simply is. To its left, Ida, lunar, cool, quiet. It begins at the left nostril and travels downward to the base, then coils around the central trunk. Ida carries something of the night within it, something connected to stillness, to inner space, to coolness. Its element is the moon. Its time is rest. When Ida is dominant, a person is softer, calmer, inclined to turn inward. To the right, Pingala, solar, warm, active. It also begins at the right nostril and coils around the central trunk, but in the opposite direction. Pingala is fire, movement, day. When it is dominant, a person is active, directed forward, full of heat. They move toward each other, again and again, left to right, right to left, like 2 streams that cannot seem to stop. And here is the most important part. There, where they meet, where these 2 streams cross around the central axis, a knot is formed, a place of gathering, a place where the life force becomes especially dense. This is the chakra, not merely a point, not merely a circle, but a place where streams converge, where 2 movements meet and join with a third, the still one. 7 such knots, 7 places where the 3 nadis meet in a particular way. But the 3 main streams are not the only ones. The tradition says there are 72,000 nadis in all. 72,000 subtle channels spreading through the body, like the roots of that tree, like the veins in a leaf, like cracks in ancient bark. The entire body is threaded through with them. Some are so small they are barely distinguishable. Some are like great rivers, but the main ones are three. There is one image that appeared far from India, in another tradition, in another part of the world, a staff with two serpents intertwined around it. The Western world knows it as a symbol of medicine, a sign of healing, the caduceus. But if you look carefully, it is the same image, a central rod, two serpents coiling around it in opposite directions, meeting again and again, creating knots where their bodies cross. Perhaps this is coincidence, perhaps not. Certain kinds of knowledge appeared in different corners of the earth at nearly the same time, as if the human body itself was suggesting them to those who knew how to listen. Listening to oneself is also a science, not a simple one, but a very ancient one. There is a separate conversation about Ida and Pingala, about the rhythm of breathing, about how at any moment one nostril breathes a little more freely than the other, and how this changes the state of the mind. That conversation will come separately in its own time. For now, simply feel this movement. Two streams that do not stand still, cannot stand still. One, cool, flowing to the left. The other, warm, flowing to the right. And between them, an axis, quiet as a tree in a nighttime forest. A river always spreads outward. It searches for places to grow wider, to slow down, to form a still pool, calm, dark, deep. So too, these three streams form their own lakes along the way, their own places where energy gathers, settles, accumulates a particular quality. 7 lakes, each with its own floor, its own taste of water, its own light above the surface. One smells of earth and roots, another of damp air after rain, a third of smoke and heated stone. Each of these lakes is a world of its own, separate, with its own laws, its own density, with what lives only here and nowhere else. You already know there are 7, and perhaps you already sense, they are present right now in the body that lies here in the dark. You are breathing slowly, and with each exhale, something settles just a little. This is not accidental. This is exactly what the tradition speaks of. The body works on its own. The nadis flow on their own. The chakras spin on their own. You can simply lie down and be here. And this is already enough for something to begin to find balance. The forest at dawn gradually brightens. Birds wake one by one. The water between the roots murmurs on, quiet, steady, without effort. 3 trunks rise toward the sky. Their tops are already in the first light. And the first of these lakes, the deepest, the densest, the closest to the earth, is where the journey begins. The first of these lakes, the deepest, the densest, the closest to the earth, this is where we begin. Imagine a forest path in early morning. The mist has not yet lifted. It lies between the trunks, white, unhurried, like the breath of a sleeping forest. The grass is wet. The earth underfoot is soft, warm, and springy. It remembers last night's rain. Off to the side of the path stands an old tree, very old. Its roots have long surfaced, twisted into knots, like hands folded in prayer. The bark is dark and wet. It smells of rotting leaves and moss, and of resin, and of something else, something without a name, but that everyone knows from childhood. On the roots of this tree sits a person, motionless, back straight, palms open on the knees. He is not looking into the mist. He is looking within. This is an image that returns again and again across thousands of years of texts. A yogi beneath a tree, roots beneath him, earth beneath the roots, and somewhere at the very lowest point of the body, the first of the 7 centers. It is called Muladhara. The word comes from Sanskrit, mula, root, adhara, foundation, the root foundation, the lowest of the lakes, the place from which everything begins. It is located at the very base of the spine. There, where the body meets the ground when you sit. There, where the lower end of the central channel descends into the darkness like a root descending into soil, not in the flesh exactly, not in the bone, but in the subtle body, in that part of it which corresponds to earth. The element of Muladhara is earth, the slowest of elements, the densest, the most silent. The tantrics who described this center saw its color as a deep yellow, not bright, not sunny, but dark and saturated, like wet riverbed sand, like clay after rain, like that from which vessels are shaped, still raw, still heavy, but already holding their form. The image of the center in the texts is a square, a stable form, a form with 4 sides and 4 corners, one that cannot be overturned, only shifted. Around this square, 4 lotus petals. 4, a number that repeats here as a reminder. Every side has its support. And there is a sound, a particular syllable, seed-like, as the tradition calls it. One that begins with the letter L, heavy and deep, like the strike of a stone against wet earth. It is not spoken aloud to explain anything. It is whispered inwardly, slowly, with the sense of it descending, settling, going down. But what does this chakra hold? What lives within it? The most simple, the most necessary. A warm home, bread on the table, a roof overhead, sleep that truly restores, the feeling that beneath the feet there is something solid, that there is earth, that there is something to rest upon. Muladhara is not wisdom and not insight. It is something older, more primary, what the body knows before words. I am here. I have something to stand on. That is all this chakra says, simply, calmly, like a stone that is in no hurry. When it is in balance, there is a sense of stability, quiet, unobtrusive, like the ground beneath your feet, which you do not think about as long as it is there. The body rests. Sleep comes easily. There is no anxiety about tomorrow, no trembling in the hands from fear. There is simply life in the body, now, here. When balance is absent, everything is different. Anxiety rises without cause. The body cannot relax, even when there is no threat. Fear arrives, for oneself, for one's place in the world, for the feeling that tomorrow the ground might vanish. This is not weakness. It is a signal, the first and deepest. Something below is not holding. The tradition says that it is here, at the very base, at the densest point of the body, that the coiled force sleeps, by all accounts. The one that was the subject of a separate, recent conversation. It sleeps the way a seed sleeps in the earth in winter. Quiet, dense, until its hour arrives. Think of a temple's foundation, of what is not visible from the outside, of the stone laid in the earth long before the walls appeared, the columns, the dome. A foundation is never beautiful. It is not decorated. It cannot be seen. But without it, everything else is impossible. The walls would collapse. The columns would fall. The dome would sink into dust. Muladhara is the foundation, not the decoration, not the summit, the base, the thing on which everything else rests. Remember your feet, right now, how they rest against the sheet, how there is something solid beneath them. Mattress, bed, floor. This feeling of support, it comes from here, from the lowest center, from the earth. The connection of Muladhara to the body is the legs, the soles of the feet, the hips, the base of the pelvic floor, the parts with which we touch the earth, with which we stand, with which we take root. It is no accident that those who are anxious often cannot feel their legs. They lose contact with the earth, literally, while those who are calm stand firmly, steadily, like trees with deep roots. Ancient texts give Muladhara its own deity and its own place in the tantric system. But what matters most about it is not the symbolism. It is what it means in life, the simple right to be, to simply exist, to simply breathe, to simply lie in the darkness and know that the earth holds. About how ancient rituals helped a person feel this support through fire, through earth, through simple shelter. There will be a time. a conversation of its own, ahead. For now, simply rest here, at the foundation, where the roots descend into the earth, where the square stands firmly, where 4 petals have opened around the first and quietest of the centers. The earth holds. It always has, even when you were not thinking of it, even when you were traveling, anxious, in motion. It was beneath your feet, silently, without demands. It simply held. But earth without water is a desert, hard, motionless, voiceless. Nothing grows from it. There is no current in it. And the next step is precisely the transition from the dense to the fluid, from the heavy to that which can take on form, reflect the moon, and carry boats upon its surface. Water flows to where there is space, to where the earth yields, where roots descend deep and hold no longer. Something fluid begins, something with no firm form, something able to become any vessel that receives it. So too, the next step opens not by effort, but by yielding, not by moving forward, but by dissolving backward, into water, into moonlight, into the sound of night water on the shore, heard even without opening the eyes. Imagine a riverbank late at night. The moon is already high. It does not warm, it silvers. The ripples on the water flash and fade, flash and fade. A soft lapping touches the stones and goes again and again, like breath, like a pulse that is in no hurry. Here, by this bank, in this light, lives the second of the 7 centers. It is called Svadhisthana. 2 words joined. Sva, one's own, adhisthana, dwelling, one's own dwelling, the place where something deepest in you resides. Not the mind, not the will, what moves before words. It is located a little higher, above the pubic bone, in the area of the sacrum, where the body holds its first warmth, where lives the force that was there before you learned to think. Its element is water, and this is no accident. Water does not ask where to flow. It flows where space is open. It curves around stones without breaking them. It takes the shape of its banks without losing itself. It remembers the form of any vessel and is attached to none of them. The color associated with this center is orange, warm, like the sunset settling on water, like fire reflected in a river, like the last light that slowly dims before night arrives. The image is a crescent moon, surrounded by 6 petals, like a lotus open on the water. 6 petals, 6 facets of what is kept here. And at the very center, a syllable beginning with V, a soft sound, like the whisper of water against a bank. The tantrics repeated it quietly, almost soundlessly, letting the body feel its vibration before the mind had time to understand. Here live taste and desire, longing and fluidity. All that wants, reaches, clings, all that is felt but not explained, the joy of touch, the bitterness of parting, the moist warmth of closeness, a strange ache without cause, the kind that rises sometimes in the evening when rain sounds outside. This is not weakness. This is aliveness. One who feels nothing is not stronger. They are simply further from the water, further from that undercurrent which determines where the boat moves, even when the surface looks calm. Imagine a boat on a river. The oarsman looks at the water and sees only ripples. He does not see the current, but it is there. It pulls, slowly, relentlessly. And if the oarsman does not know about it, he thinks he is choosing the direction himself, while the boat has long been carried by something deeper. Svadhisthana is precisely that current, the force that moves us before we realize we are moving. In balance, it gives ease, fluidity, the ability to feel and let go, to rejoice without clinging, to grieve without drowning, to pass through experience the way water passes through stones, touching but not staying forever. When it is absent, something else appears, either a thirst that nothing satisfies, an attachment to people, to feelings, to what once brought joy, or the opposite, coldness, dryness, the inability to feel anything at all, like a river in drought, bare stones at the bottom, and no movement. Both conditions are not a fault. This is simply water that found the wrong channel, or found none at all. But there is something else here, something spoken of less often. Svadhisthana is the dwelling of creative force, the same force by which the body brings Ai's children into being, and by which the soul brings images into being, paintings, songs, words that come in the middle of the night. In the body that creates life, and in the mind that creates meaning, the source is one. The water is the same. Only the vessels differ. The moon governs water. It pulls the oceans. It changes the tides. It reflects in the quietest puddle as clearly as in the boundless sea. And Svadhisthana is connected to the lunar rhythm, to what comes and goes, grows and diminishes, fills and empties. This is not weakness to live in such a rhythm. It is honesty. The moon is not ashamed to wane. It knows it will fill again. Lie still. Feel the weight of the lower belly. There, where the body rests against the bed, where everything is soft and warm, where there is no tension, only quiet life continuing without your effort. Perhaps something moves there gently, a slight motion, almost imperceptible, like ripples on water in a soft breeze. This is the undercurrent. It was always here. It is just not always audible. Moonlight on the river does not ask whether the water is beautiful. It simply falls, and the water receives it, silvers, comes alive. So too Svadhisthana, not a place for judgment of desires, not a place where something must be corrected or conquered. It is a place where they can be seen, like a reflection in still water, and perhaps noticed. They too are moving. They too pass. No wave stands forever. The tantric texts describe this center with care, with respect, as a place where particular heaviness of human existence is gathered, where the strongest attachments live, and the most delicate beauty, both. Water, one stagnant, one flowing, and the difference is only whether there is movement. Water without movement becomes a swamp. Water in movement, a river. The same water, the same beginning. The night above the river is still. The moon moves slowly across the sky. The silver on the ripples flickers and settles. The boat rocks quietly, without hurry. There, in the depths of the water, the current, it knows its way. It always has. You do not need to direct it. Only notice. Only sometimes look down and see that beneath the surface something is alive, dark and warm. This is yours. This is one's own dwelling. Svadhisthana. Let the water be water. Let the moon silver the ripples. Let the current carry the boat to where it has always known the way. And as you lie here, as the breath is quiet and even, as the body grows heavier and sinks deeper, the water continues its movement, without effort, without words. Water without warmth is cold and slow. The mist above a river does not clear by itself. It is dispersed by something else, something that heats the water from within, rises in clouds of steam above the surface, and gives everything around clarity and strength. This is the next step, the one that lives a little higher, the one called fire. Fire heats water. It disperses fog. It makes possible what without it would remain stagnant and cold. This is not a metaphor. This is the third step on the path that leads us from below upward. Imagine an evening cave in the Himalayas, not a distant, imaginary one, but a living, real one. Walls of dark gray stone, rough and warm from the fire. A campfire burns at the entrance, not large, just enough to drive back the cold and give light. The wood crackles quietly, like words spoken in a low voice. A figure in a woolen shawl sits motionless, back straight, palms on the knees. Reflections of the flame fall on the wall, amber, gold, alive. They do not repeat. Each moment, a new pattern, and in these patterns, something very ancient, something fire remembers. This place is Manipura, the third of the 7 lotuses. It is located in the area of the navel, a little above. There, where the belly meets the chest. There, where the warmth that you feel from within on a cold day is born. The word mani in Sanskrit means precious gem. The word pura, city, dwelling, fortress. Manipura is the city of jewels. This is what those who first drew the map of the inner body called this place, and not without reason, because here is the sun inside the human being. The element of this lotus is fire, its color golden, like the flame of a candle in a dark room, like the first ray over a mountain ridge, sometimes bright yellow, almost dazzling. In the old texts, it was compared to the heat of midday, when the sky turns white and the earth breathes. The image of Manipura is a triangle pointing downward, surrounded by 10 petals. 10, not simply a number. It is a reminder that a particular fullness is concentrated here, not completion, but maturity, force, ready to act. The seed syllable of this center is the sound R, a single sound, short, like the strike of flint, and in it, the entire character of fire, the sharpness that ignites, the clarity that tolerates no shadow. Think of a forge, not a modern one, an ancient one, where there is hammer, anvil, bellows, and furnace. The furnace is not merely a source of heat. It is a place of transformation. Into it goes ore, dark, heavy, resistant, and fire does to it what nothing else can do. It turns one thing into another, the dense into the flexible, the rough into the precise, the hidden into the manifest. Manipura is your inner furnace. Here food is digested. Modern anatomy knows this. The stomach, liver, pancreas, solar plexus. All of this lives here, in this place where the body's heat is strongest. But the tradition speaks of something more. The fire of Manipura digests not only food, it digests experience. Everything that has happened to you, losses, meetings, disappointments, discoveries, all of it passes through this fire and either becomes strength or remains undigested, heavy, obstructing. When this center is in balance, there is a quiet confidence, not loud, not aggressive, quiet, like heat that burns steadily and long, neither flaring nor dying. Decisions arrive on their own, not from fear, not from anger, from clarity, from knowing, I can, I will manage, this is enough, There are people whose fire burns evenly. You know them. They do not proclaim their strength. They simply do, calmly, without unnecessary words. Next to them, it is warmer, like beside a fire. When balance is absent, the fire is either too small or too large. If too small, the body cools within. The will drops. A feeling arrives that there is no strength, that everything is too heavy, that each step requires effort that is no longer there. This is not weakness of character. This is a fire gone dim. It needs not reproach, but wood. If the fire is too great, it overflows, becomes aggression, the desire to control everything around, an impatience that burns both oneself and others. A person with an overheated Manipura is like an overworked bellows in a forge. The temperature rises, but the metal no longer listens. It cracks instead. Balance is not the absence of fire. It is knowing how to work with it. The fire that tantric teaching speaks of as the force of transformation rises from exactly here. In the tantric texts, it is called by various names, but the image is one. A warmth living in the body, capable of turning the ordinary into the sacred, turning dark ore into gold. This is not magic. This is the work of fire that has a direction. Watch how the campfire burns in the cave. The figure in the woolen shawl does not stir. They are simply with the fire. They do not control it. They do not extinguish it or stoke it. They simply sit beside it and let it be. Perhaps this is the wisdom of Manipura, not to fight the fire, not to fear it, to sit beside it. Let it warm you. Right now, beneath your hands, beneath your breath, this fire burns quietly, steadily. It warms you from within as you lie in the darkness. It is digesting this day, everything in it. And by morning, something new will emerge from this, not the same as yesterday. This is transformation, not loud, not visible, simply fire doing its work, night after night, day after day. Manipura is the last of the lower steps. Earth, water, fire. 3 dense elements, 3 foundations on which ordinary life stands. They are not good or bad. They are necessary. Without earth, there is no support. Without water, there is no flow. Without fire, there is no strength. But above the fire, something else begins. What cannot be measured, what cannot be held in cupped hands. Above this campfire, above this golden heat, a space opens in which, for the first time, something becomes possible that cannot be weighed or touched. A space where something moves differently, more quietly, more finely. The space of the heart. And above the fire, a space in which, for the first time, something becomes possible that cannot be weighed or measured. The space of the heart. This is where we arrive now, not ascending, simply arriving. The way you enter a room where someone has long been waiting. The dawn over the Ganga does not begin with light. It begins with silence of a different quality. The silence of the night is dense, dark, closed in on itself. The silence before dawn is different. In it, something opens, as if an invisible hand slowly draws back a curtain. In the old temple by the river, this hour is well known. The stone still holds the cold of night, but somewhere below, at the base of the walls, warmth is already awakening. Carved windows admit the first light in narrow strips. They lie on the floor diagonally, pale and tender, like the opening lines of a prayer. There is a scent of jasmine, a quiet scent. It does not rush in. It is simply here, mixed with the breath of warm stone, with the gentle moisture rising from the river. This scent calls to nothing. It simply is present. It is precisely at such an hour, in such a place, that something in the chest begins to respond. The heart does not quicken. On the contrary, it slows, grows a little heavier, warmer, as if remembering. The fourth of the seven is called Anahata. In Sanskrit, this word means unstruck, that which sounds without a blow. Think about this. Every sound in our world is born from a collision. Palm against palm, bow against string, tongue against palate. Two objects meet, and between them, a sound is born. This is the law of the dense world. Everything that sounds has a source. Everything that moves has come from somewhere. But Anahata is the exception. It is a sound with no source, a sound without a blow, a presence without cause. It sounds always. It does not need to be produced. It simply is. In the chest, at the level of the heart, where it grows slightly warm when you look at someone close to you, where something tightens with another's pain, where it opens when, for no reason, you want to embrace. The element of the fourth center is air. After earth, water, and fire, light, penetrating, all-encompassing. What cannot be held in a fist. What fills any vessel without belonging to it. What all living beings share. Every breath you take is drawn from a common store. The color that contemplatives saw behind closed eyes is a tender green, the color of the first leaf in April. Sometimes a soft pink, like the sky before sunrise, colors in which there is no force, only softness. The image carried by the old tantric texts is a six-pointed star, two triangles interlaced, one pointing upward toward the sky, the other pointing downward toward the earth. They do not struggle. They hold each other. Around the star, 12 petals, 12, like 12 moons in a year, like 12 sides of a full circle. This image alone says much. The heart center is neither sky nor earth. It is the place where they meet. A boundary that does not divide, but connects. Anahata lives in the chest, but the body feels it more widely. In the lungs, which open to receive air. In the hands, which reach forward or open with palms facing up. The palms are a remarkable place. They are first to feel the warmth of another person. They are first to touch another's pain. When the heart center is in balance, the palms know on their own what to do. They do not need to be taught. They remember to open, to receive, to release. This knowing is not from the mind. It is from a depth where words do not live. When this center is open, there is something that might be called warm acceptance, not agreement with everything in the world, not weakness, but the ability to look at a person nearby, any person, a difficult one, a stranger, and not tighten, to remain soft without losing oneself. This is not sentimentality. This is strength, perhaps the quietest of all strengths. When the center is not in balance, the picture is different. Either closure, walls the body builds around the heart, cynicism that appears to be intelligence but is actually protection, or the opposite, anxious attachment, when love grips rather than releases, when the wish is to hold, and this very wish causes pain. Both sides are the same thing: fear of loss or fear of opening. Air does not hold, it moves. It enters the lungs and exits and enters again. This is its nature. Anahata teaches the same: to receive and release, not because it does not matter, but because to hold back is to obstruct movement. The love that lives here is not a feeling that comes and goes. It is a quality of presence, warm, steady, quiet, like the air in a room. You cannot see it, but without it, no one would be here. Compassion is another word for the same thing: the ability to feel together without dissolving, to be beside pain without fleeing from it, simply to be present, and this is enough. The syllable connected with this center in the tradition begins with ya, prolonged, soft, with no hard edges. It does not need to be spoken. It is enough to know it exists, that each center has its own voice, quiet, seed-like, ancient. Here, in Anahata, there is one more thing. The tradition calls it Vishnu Granthi, the knot of Vishnu, one of 3 knots that appear on the way upward through the central channel. A knot is not an obstacle in the coarse sense. It is a place that requires particular delicacy, where force will not help. The knot of love. This is what keeps us in attachment, in relationships, in the world of forms in which we come to know ourselves through others. Here, the pull. Here, what one returns for. To pass through this knot, not to cut it, but truly to pass. One must learn to love without clenching the fist, to love with an open palm. The way you hold a bird. Close your hand and it suffocates. Open it completely and it flies away. But there is a place in between where the palm is open and the bird stays of its own will. This is not a metaphor. This is a description of a precise inner movement. The dawn over the Ganga is now full. The light in the carved windows has grown warmer. The stone has begun to release the cold of night and receive the new warmth. The jasmine is still here, quiet, constant. Whoever sits in this temple now is perhaps thinking of nothing, simply breathing, feeling how the chest rises and falls, how air enters and leaves. And in this simple movement is already everything one needs to know about Anahata. Breath is love in its simplest form. You receive air. You release it. Receive. Release. Again and again, your whole life, without effort, without wanting to hold. There is a conversation still ahead about the path of the heart, about love as a practice, about how entire traditions were built on what lives in this center. The roots of this path lead exactly here, into Anahata, into the place where that which no one struck sounds. When the time comes for this conversation, you will already know where it comes from. Palms in the dawn light, warm stone, jasmine and river, air that enters and exits and asks for nothing more. The heart center lives here, quietly, constantly, without a blow. We have passed through 4 of the 7. Earth holds, water flows, fire warms, and now air connects. But there is something more subtle than air, that in which air itself exists, that which allows sound to travel, ether, and in it, a voice. The first thing this universe ever spoke. A voice. It was always there. Before words, before names. First, there was sound. And that sound was air that had grown thinner than itself. Imagine a high mountain monastery in the hour before dawn. Stone walls that are many hundreds of years old. Darkness still undisturbed. And then, from the depths of this darkness, a voice begins, low like the hum of earth, slow like water flowing under ice. It is in no hurry. it simply is. This is the male chant of the morning service, syllables that the monks repeated yesterday and the day before, and for hundreds of years before that. They do not sing words. They sing the air itself, or what is more subtle than air, that space in which sound becomes possible at all. It is called Akasha, ether, the fifth element, the one that cannot be touched, cannot be set alight, cannot be poured into a cup. It is not earth, not water, not fire, not air, and yet it is present in each of them, like the silence that exists inside every note. The fifth step on the path has its own place in the body, at the hollow of the throat, there where the neck meets the chest, there where the voice is born before it touches the tongue. If you place your fingers there quietly, you can feel the warmth, the pulse, something alive that is always here. Its name is Vishuddha. In Sanskrit, this word means purified, clear, pure, the one through which everything we speak passes. Every word ever said aloud passed through it. Every exhale with the name of someone loved. Every cry into emptiness. Every whisper in the dark. Its image is a circle, simply a circle, with no angles, no beginning, and no end, surrounded by 16 petals. 16, as many as there are shades of silence that knows how to speak. Its color is blue, like the sky above the highest mountain passes, where clouds seldom rise. There the sky becomes something different, deeper, quieter. It is not blue. It is transparent. This is what Vishuddha is, the place where you become transparent to your own voice. The seed syllable of this center is the sound H, one syllable. It is called the mother of all mantras because it contains nothing yet formed, only the exhale that became sound, only the effort that precedes any word, not ha, not ho, but something more simple, like the first breath, like the sound that existed before languages. Those who lived in monasteries high in the mountains knew something particular about this. There, where the air is thin, the voice sounds different. It does not sink into density as in the valley. It goes upward, it dissolves into that very sky above the passes. And the monk singing in such silence hears not only his own voice, he hears the voice become part of the surrounding space. This is Akasha, not a separate sound, but that in which sound lives. But Vishuddha is not only the voice that others hear. There is another one, the one with which you speak to yourself, that quiet inner voice that comments on every step of your day, that condemns when you have made a mistake, or soothes when you are tired, that sometimes speaks truth so clearly that you are afraid to hear it. This too is Vishuddha. Think about this quietly. What is this inner voice like? Is it kind, or does it demand too much? Does it speak to you the way one speaks to a friend, or the way one speaks to someone who is required to measure up? The tradition says, when this center is in balance, words come easily and precisely, not from tension, not from fear, but from the silence that knows what needs to be said. And silence, too, comes easily. You can be quiet when there is nothing to say, and this is not weakness. It is another kind of clarity. When balance is disturbed, a lump appears. You feel it. Something grips the throat when you want to say something important and cannot. Or the opposite. Words flow in a stream you can no longer control. Talk that fills the space where silence could have been. Both of these conditions are not a fault or a flaw, simply a sign that the throat is seeking balance. There is an image that helps clarify this. A mountain spring, the highest one where water emerges from stone for the first time. It has not yet become a river. It has not yet carried silt or touched the banks. It simply is pure, cold, quiet. It flows because that is how it is made. Without effort, without words about the fact that it flows. A voice in balance is like this spring. It speaks when it needs to. It is silent when silence is needed. It does not stagnate, and it does not flood. It is precisely here at the hollow of the throat that the finest connection passes between what is inside and what comes out. The tantrics said, truth lives in the throat, not a conclusion, not an opinion, but that simple truth you already know, and that you are sometimes afraid to speak aloud. To speak the truth, one must first hear it, quietly, without judgment. Simply hear that the answer already exists within. And the throat is the boundary where the answer either receives a voice or returns inside again. The monks in the mountain monasteries sang not for beauty. They sang to clear this path. Each morning chant like water washing a riverbed, not instantly, over time, day after day, syllable by syllable. And after years of such practice, the voice became different, not louder, not more beautiful, cleaner, as if everything unnecessary had disappeared from it. You are lying in the darkness now. Your breath is quiet and even. Your throat is relaxed, or almost. Notice it. Simply notice whether there is tension there, a lump that sometimes lives there for weeks, and that we forget. There is nothing to do. Simply notice. Sometimes this alone is enough. When attention comes to a place of tension, something begins to gently release. Not because you commanded it, but because the warmth of attention is itself healing. The throat is connected to breath, and this is a connection that has long been known. Before speaking, always an in-breath, not accidental, but one that gives space for the next word. The breath is the pause the voice takes from silence before speaking. And perhaps this is the secret. The most important words come after the deepest breath. The most precise words are born from the fullest silence. The sky above the high passes is blue, almost transparent. It says nothing. It simply is, vast, clean, open to any sound that passes through it. Nothing will stay in it forever. A sound will fly through, and the sky will become quiet again. Vishuddha is like this sky. It does not hold words. It lets them pass. And those words that passed through it cleanly, they carry. The monks finished the morning service. The last syllable faded into the stone of the walls. Silence came, different from what had existed before the chant. Washed, alive, the kind in which there is no longer any need to say anything. And above the voice, above this blue sky of the throat center, there is something more, something that sees, not with eyes, something that has no eyelid, an eye that looks from within and never closes. And above the voice, what sees? An eye that has no eyelid. Imagine a dark cave, not a frightening one, a quiet one, the kind that is sought out deliberately, where people come to stop seeing outside and begin to see within. The walls are wet from mountain moisture, no windows, no crack of light, only one candle placed directly before the one who sits. It burns steadily, without trembling. The flame stands still in the motionless air, and the one who sits does not look at it. No, they allow it to be. There, where they have two closed eyes, there is a third place. Not an organ, not a point, a place. Between the brows, a little deeper than the skin, there, where the forehead holds warmth the longest. The Sanskrit word Ajna is translated in various ways. Command, knowledge, understanding. It is said, this is the place through which a teacher directs without opening the mouth. One glance is enough, one inner impulse. Because here, the command no longer comes through words. Here, there is direct transmission. Its color is indigo, deep blue, violet, the color of the sky at that precise hour when night has not yet gone, but light has already appeared somewhere beyond the horizon. That strip, which you cannot call either darkness or dawn, it is between. This color, the color of the threshold. Its image is a circle. Within the circle, 2 petals, not 16, not 12, not 10, only 2, one on the left, one on the right, like wings, like 2 eyes, looking in different directions, and between them a third, looking straight ahead. The seed syllable of Ajna is Om, 1 syllable. That one, the one considered the mother of all sounds, their beginning and their completion. Everything that is spoken arose from it and will return to it. The Tantrics placed it precisely here, between the brows, at the very center of inner hearing. Here is the place of meeting. The three main nadis, the three great streams that have been rising in parallel all this time, finally converge. Ida, lunar, from the left, Pingala, solar, from the right, and Sushumna, central, straight, through which moves the most subtle thing. Three rivers flow into one lake, quiet, deep, without a ripple. This place in the tradition is also known by another name, Rudra Granthi, the second of the three knots, the knot of knowledge. If the first, Brahma Granthi, holds us in the dense, in the need to survive and possess, and the second, Vishnu Granthi, holds us in the heart, in love and attachment, then this one holds us in the subtle, in the conviction that I am the one who understands, the one who sees, the one who knows. And this is the most difficult thing to release, because understanding seems the most valuable. The thought that arrived in silence, the image that suddenly became clear, the feeling, I understood. The mind holds on to this more tightly than any possession. Knowledge is a subtle form of possession, and Rudra Granthi holds exactly this. To pass through Ajna, one needs something more than understanding. One needs to release even the very idea of the one who understands. There was a separate conversation about seeing without a seer, about that point where the one who observes disappears, and only observation remains, about Advaita, the teaching of non-duality. Here, in Ajna, these are the very gates through which that experience enters the body, not as philosophy, as a living encounter. Those who practiced in dark caves described it this way. First, you see light. Not outside, inside, bluish, sometimes white. It does not blind. It simply is, as if another candle had been lit behind the forehead. Quiet, constant. Then you stop dividing. Here is I, and there is what I see. The boundary grows indistinct, and what remains is seeing. Modern anatomy knows of the pineal gland, a small organ deep in the brain. It produces melatonin, the substance that connects the body to the rhythms of light and darkness. It responds to darkness. It works precisely when there is no light outside. when a person closes their eyes, when they sit in a dark cave with a single candle. Is this a coincidence? Perhaps that is not the main point. The main point is that the body itself knows. Darkness is not an absence. It is a condition. The condition under which the inner becomes visible. When Ajna is at rest, the mind is quiet. Decisions do not require prolonged deliberation. They simply arrive. Not because you thought more intensely, but because you thought less and listened more. Intuition is not mysticism. It is a mind that has stopped making noise over itself and has begun to hear something deeper. When this peace is absent, everything is murky. Thoughts layer on thoughts. One pulls another. Attention jumps. It seems you understood something important, and a minute later it is gone. Or the opposite. One thought circles round and round, like water in a whirlpool. This is also Ajna, only not in balance. For it, darkness, closed eyes, silence, a space in which there is nothing to look at. Then what is inside begins to see. Now, in this darkness, if you are lying quietly, notice your forehead. Do not think about it. Simply notice. Somewhere between the brows, warmth, peace, heaviness, or lightness, as if something there is opening. There is nothing to do. Only allow this place to be. In the cave, the candle burns slowly. The flame is in no hurry. It simply stands in the darkness and gives light for as long as there is wax. And the one who sits is also in no hurry. They know hurry is the movement of the mind, and here something else is needed, not movement, a stop. Ajna is not effort. It is consent to see what is already there. The sky before dawn is darkest in the very last moment before light appears. Those who have met dawns in the mountains know this. The darkness deepens. Then, the first faint trace. And a moment later, the entire sky changes color. But first, this very darkness, indigo, almost violet, almost blue, perfect. This color is here, between the brows, the color of the last darkness before light. Two petals, like wings, and through them, flight, not of the body, of understanding. And above the third eye, what is beyond all seeing, not a center among others, not a step on a stairway, the very summit, which has no name above it. And above the third eye, what is beyond all seeing, not a center, but the very summit, the place the ancients did not dare to name, because every name has a boundary, and this one has none. Imagine the hour before dawn in the Himalayas, that moment when night has not yet gone and day has not yet come, when the sky turns dark blue, almost transparent, when the mountain ridge, vast, motionless, ancient, begins to emerge from the mist like a word about to be spoken. On a rock sits a figure, wrapped in a woolen shawl, motionless. Before it, the entire ridge spreads out, peak behind peak, layer behind layer, receding to where there is no longer air or sound, only light. White, even, without a source. The figure is not looking at the peaks. It simply sits, and the peaks are within it. Sahasrara, the thousand-petaled. The Sanskrit word unfolds slowly, like the lotus itself. Sahasra, thousand. Ara, petal. But 1,000 is not a number, not exactly 1,000, but an image of the countless, what cannot be counted, what has no edge. A lotus turned upward, directed toward the sky, not downward like the others, upward to where there is nothing more. The tantrics often did not call Sahasrara a chakra. The word was too narrow for them. A chakra is a wheel, a circle, a bounded form. Sahasrara is what is the wheels, above the system, of the map. If the 6 centers are a stairway, then Sahasrara is not a step. It is the sky above the stairway. Its color is white or iridescent, like a pure ray of light that, meeting a prism, scatters into the full spectrum. All colors together are white, all centers together, all petals, all sounds. This is silence. This is here. There is no seed syllable here, no seed sound, because a syllable is already a sound, and a sound is already something. And here is the place where something comes to an end. Not emptiness, not nothing, a fullness for which there is no name. The ancient Upanishads spoke of Brahman, infinite, omnipresent, untouched, and of Atman, that which lives within each of us like a spark of the same fire. They said, these two are one. But this is easy to say. It is harder to feel it. Sahasrara is the place within the human being itself where this meeting occurs. Not in a text, not in a concept, not in a system of signs. In the body, in the crown of the head, which is resting on the pillow right now. Imagine this, not understanding it. Simply imagine that the most infinite and the most personal meet here, right here, in you. The tantric image speaks of this differently, in image rather than concept. At the summit, Shiva, motionless, eternal, pure consciousness. And from below, Shakti rises to meet him. Force, movement, life. They meet. And in this meeting, not the fusion of two different things, but recognition. They were always one. The separation was an appearance. The return is a remembering. The path of Kundalini, spoken of in the tantric texts, ends here. She has risen through all the centers, past all the knots, arrived at the summit, and met that from which she never departed. In this is a paradox that cannot be resolved by thought. It can only be felt, or met in the silence between two breaths. Sahasrara is located at the crown of the head, a little above the top of the skull, the texts say. A little above, already outside the skull, already in space, already in the sky. The connection to the body here is the most subtle. Not an organ, not a node, not a plexus. Here, that which allows the brain to think at all. That in which thinking occurs. Not the thought itself, but the field in which thought is possible. When someone is said to have a clear, open state, this is something from Sahasrara. When someone suddenly feels that everything is connected, that I am not separate, that behind all of this there is something one. This comes from there. not the experience of understanding, the experience of understanding dissolving. The summit of the mountain, imagine it, not the one with a flag and a group of climbers, the one that no one ascends, the one that has stood since the beginning of time and will stand after. There is no sign on it, no word, no plaque with a name, only sky and air and light that has no direction. It simply is. So too Sahasrara. There is nothing there that can be named, and for exactly this reason, everything is there. The texts say little. Purnananda, in his Shat Chakra Nirupana, described the 6 centers in detail, petal by petal, color by color, syllable by syllable, but the 7th separately, above the 6, above the system. He wrote about it briefly, because language ends here. Language is made for distinctions. This, not that. Here, not there. I, not you. But Sahasrara is the place where distinction disappears, and language is helpless here, not because it is poor, but because it was not made for this. Be quiet for a moment. Simply rest here. Do you notice anything in the area of the crown? Perhaps a faint tingling, perhaps a sense of space, perhaps nothing specific, only silence, a little different from the surrounding one. There is no need to seek a particular experience, nothing to achieve. The very attention directed to the crown already changes something, quietly, without effort. The hour before dawn in the Himalayas does not last long. Very soon the sky will begin to lighten. The mist over the mountains will slowly rise. The first ray will touch the highest of the peaks, and it will burst into white before everything else, before the valleys and rivers and villages. It is the first to receive the light. The figure on the rock has not moved. There is no need to see this dawn. It is felt from within. Sahasrara is not something that is opened. It is something that is remembered. The way you remember a mother tongue you did not know you knew. And so, the map has been shown. 7 centers, from earth to sky. 7 languages in which life speaks in the body, 7 shades of a single light. You have heard about each one. You have passed through this path with your attention. But a map is not a journey. A description of a mountain is not a climb. Words about silence are not silence. Knowledge of the meeting of Shiva and Shakti is not the meeting itself. And then a simple, human, most honest question arises. The question asked by everyone who hears of these centers for the first time. The question the map does not answer. How does one walk it? The map has been shown. 7 gates, 7 steps, 7 worlds. They lie before you, like a stairway, reaching both upward and inward. But a stairway is just wood and stone. The question is different. How does one walk it? Evening. In the temple, long shadows stretch from the columns to the floor. Someone is singing in a far chapel. A low, steady sound, like the hum of bronze. Candles waver slightly, though there is not the slightest breeze. It is always this way. Light moves, air is silent. Imagine you enter this temple in the evening. Your footsteps ring in the high vaults. You stop and stand, and you notice that you are not alone. Here too, in the silence between the singing and the shadows, stand questions, old, patient. How is the ascent arranged? What does it mean to walk the stairway? And must one rise all the way to the top to be considered a traveler? Most people live resting on the 3 lower steps: earth, water, fire. Muladhara, Svadhisthana, Manipura. A warm home, bread on the table. This is earth. Love, desire, grief, joy, creativity. This is water. Will, decision. The quiet strength to do what needs doing. This is fire. 3 lower steps. And let anyone who considers this little try to live even one day, truly grounded, truly feeling, truly resolute. This is already a great deal. It is perhaps the foundation of everything. And yet the tradition says the stairway does not end at fire. Above it is the air of Anahata. Above the air, the voice of Vishuddha. Above the voice, the seeing of Ajna, and above everything, the silence of Sahasrara. 4 upper gates are waiting. They do not demand. They do not hurry. They simply wait. But here is what matters to understand. Ascent does not mean leaving the lower steps behind. It is not a flight from earth toward sky, not a renunciation of the body for the sake of spirit. The tradition is not about this. Ascent is inclusion. Each higher step does not cancel the lower one. It absorbs it, sanctifies it, makes it fuller. A person with an open heart does not stop feeling hunger. They simply feed not only themselves. A person who has found their voice does not lose their will. They speak from quiet strength, not from fear. A person who has gained vision does not leave the world. They see the world more clearly than before. The stairway works in both directions, not only from below upward, but also from above downward. Those who know of this path say, the descent is also a gift. When the subtle pours down and sanctifies the dense, something changes. What before seemed coarse becomes alive. What was dark and heavy begins to breathe. The body that carried a person all their life is suddenly felt differently, not as a burden, as a temple. One who has risen to Sahasrara and returns to Muladhara changed. They eat, sleep, feel pain again. But in the simplest things, they see something they did not notice before. Bread breaks differently. Water smells differently. The feet feel the earth. The path goes upward, and the path goes downward. And at each step, one can stay as long as needed. But on this path, there are 3 places where movement slows. The tradition calls them granthi, knots. 3 places on the Sushumna where force pauses, like water before a threshold. The first knot is Brahma Granthi. It is located at the very base between Muladhara and Svadhisthana, the knot of dense existence. Here the earth holds. Inertia, habit, fear of change, the heaviness of everything accumulated. To pass through it, one does not need to destroy what is dear. One simply needs to stop clinging to it so tightly that the fingers turn white. The second knot is Vishnu Granthi. It lives in Anahata, in the heart, the knot of love and attachment. Here, force pauses differently, not by fear, by desire, by longing, by tenderness that has turned into a chain. To pass through this knot, one must learn to love in a way that does not clench the fist. An open palm holds more than a closed one. The third knot is Rudra Granthi. It is at Ajna, between the brows, the knot of knowledge, the subtle idea of oneself. I understand, I see, I know. All of this can also become an obstacle. To pass through it, one must release even the image of oneself as the one who understands. This is, perhaps, the most difficult step. 3 knots, 3 moments when the path requires not effort, but release. There was a separate conversation about the careful ascent of the steps, about Patanjali, about yoga as an 8-fold path. This is a different, bodily side of the same thing. The same stairway, a different language. There, mind and ethics. Here, body and energy. They lead to one place. And here is something else the tradition says. There is no need to force the chakras open. This is a Western simplification that came later and took hold more firmly than it should have. In it, there is impatience. Give me a tool, give me a technique, give me a result now. But the tradition says differently. Do not open. Bring into balance. Allow to be. The chakras are not closed. They are already working. Right now, as you lie in the darkness and hear this voice, they move like slow rivers, like wheels in misty light. There is no need to turn them on, only to stop obstructing them. Do not rush the water. Do not stoke the fire. Do not demand that the earth fly. The stairway stands. It goes nowhere. One can climb one step and spend an entire life there. One can descend. One can stand in the middle for a long time and look both down and up. There is no wrong place on this stairway. There is only the place where you are now. The singing voice in the far chapel fades. The candles continue to move. The shadows on the walls have changed a little, longer, softer. The temple asks nothing of those who enter it. It simply is. It stood before you and will stand after. Its walls remember thousands of voices, thousands of questions, thousands of silences. And now, silence again. You stand on a step. Which one? This does not matter. You are here. But the stairway has been described, the knots named, the path shown, upward and downward. And then a simple human question arises. Not the question of an ascetic, not the question of a yogi living in a cave, the most ordinary question that a person asks at the end of a long day. What do I do with all this? I, an ordinary person who has work, family, cares, and exhaustion. One who is not headed to the Himalayas and is not looking for a teacher. And then a simple human question arises. What does an ordinary person do with these? Not a yogi, not an ascetic, not one who lives in a cave, not one who rises at 4 a.m. and spends hours in stillness, but one who wakes to an alarm, travels somewhere, grows tired, comes home, lies down to sleep, and again. In the Bihar ashram, this question was asked often. White walls, open windows, morning light falls on copper vessels arranged along the passage. Swami Satyananda Saraswati taught there differently than was customary in strict traditions, not from the summit downward, but from below upward, not from perfection toward people, but from people toward what is already in them. He said something like this: there is no need to own the chakras. They are already open. They are working right now as you listen. The only question is, are you attentive to what is happening? Do you notice? A simple practice, quiet, almost unnoticeable. Each evening, before releasing the day, you can pass your attention slowly from the bottom upward, slowly, without effort, without seeking anything. Simply notice where there is warmth, where there is density, where tension has settled like a heavy stone, and where, on the contrary, there is lightness, one you did not expect. Begin with the soles of the feet. Feel the sheet beneath the heels, the warmth, the weight, the way the body presses against the surface, This is the lowest of the centers. Earth, root. This is exactly where every path begins. If there is fear in life, anxious, background, the kind that does not release in the morning or the evening, look there, at the base, not to fix it, simply to notice. Sometimes a single look is enough. Fear does not like to be seen without judgment. Its support, earth beneath the feet in a literal sense. Walk barefoot. Eat something simple and warm. Sleep. The most basic things, the most real. They nourish this center no less than any practice. Higher, a little warmer, the lower belly, the area that remembers everything, desire, exhaustion, old pain. When an emotional storm rises inside, it is not necessary to know the cause. You can simply lower your attention there, quietly, the way you lower a hand into water. Fluidity lives here, and if it is locked away, a person becomes dry, rigid, unable to feel. And if it overflows, they are carried along like a chip of wood. Balance here is water at rest. It reflects, but it does not overflow. It supports. Simple. Music you actually want to hear, not just switch on from habit. The movement of the body. Water, not the kind you drink from duty, but the kind in which you can dissolve. Sometimes all it takes is a shower, feeling how the water washes away something that had been wanting to leave for a long time. Move higher into the upper belly, toward the solar plexus. Here will is concentrated, the inner sun itself. When it is absent, a person is sluggish, indecisive, feels a stranger to themselves. When there is too much tension, aggression, the wish to control everything, a fragile balance. Listlessness or aggression, both signals of the same thing, that the center lacks steadiness, not strength, steadiness. These are different things. Strength presses, steadiness holds. Its support, the sun, the real one. Stand beneath it, close your eyes, turn your face toward it. Breathe deliberately, not as you happen to breathe, but as you consciously breathe. This is already care for the fire that lives here. And then the chest, the heart center. It sometimes closes so tightly that a person does not notice, grows accustomed to the closed, thinks this is how it should be, that the world outside is hard, and the heart must be protected. Close it, the way you close shutters before a storm. If the heart is closed, look there, not to force it open, simply to see. Sometimes it is waiting for only one thing, to be noticed, not demanded of, not evaluated, simply seen. It supports quiet, a conversation with someone you trust, an embrace, not a long one, not a symbolic one, a real one, the kind you linger in for a moment longer. Quiet love, not the kind that is proclaimed, but the kind that needs no words. Higher, the throat. The voice lives here, and not only the one spoken aloud, the one you speak inwardly, to yourself. Is this inner voice honest? When something unsaid accumulates, it settles precisely here, dense, heavy. If there is a feeling that a word will not come, look into the throat. What has settled there? What wishes to emerge but is afraid? Sometimes all that is needed is to sing. It does not matter what or how. Sometimes to say aloud what has long been silent. Sometimes to be truly quiet, not because there is nothing to say, but because silence itself is also a language. It supports singing, honest conversation, and real silence. Three things that seem different, but all three do the same. They allow the throat to breathe. Still higher, the space between the brows, the place where the mind gathers to a point. When the head is muddy, when thoughts go in circles, when vision is clouded, look here. Do not think about it. Simply direct attention, like a beam of a lantern. Its support, darkness, closed eyes, a quiet room. The ability to look at nothing outside. The mind settles when it stops chasing after images. And finally, the crown, the topmost, the place that is difficult to name, where the head is a little cooler, where the body ends and something else begins. If everything is exhausted, not only the body, but also the mind, and even the desire to do anything, look there. Not downward, not at the problem, but upward, into the sky, into open space, into the silence above everything. Its support, the sky, an open horizon, simply standing and looking into the distance, not looking for an answer there, simply allowing yourself to be small before something large. This releases. There is one image that helps understand all of this. The gardener does not pull a plant to make it grow. He does not tug it by the trunk. He does not hurry it. He waters. At the right time, he prunes what obstructs, and he waits, knowing that growth happens on its own, in its own rhythm, in its own time. 7 centers, like these same plants, they grow on their own. They are already alive. Your task is not to activate them, not to open them by force, only to notice, to tend, to offer what they need. Earth for the root, water for the emotions, sun for the will, warmth for the heart, voice for the throat, silence for the mind, sky for what is above the mind. There was one particular practice. It was spoken of before, the one in which all these centers are slowly visited by attention in a half-sleep state, one by one, from bottom to top. In yoga, nidra, this is done slowly, almost at the boundary between wakefulness and sleep. If you want to know more about this, that conversation is waiting for you separately. But there is also a very simple path, one that requires no teacher, no special time, no particular place. Simply lie down, as now, and pass with your attention from bottom to top, slowly, the way you walk through a house with a lantern late in the evening, looking into each room, not to fix anything, simply to confirm that everything is in place, that everything is alive, that the house is yours. And then the quietest question draws near, the one that lives at the boundary of wakefulness and sleep. What does it mean to fall asleep with this knowledge? What happens when consciousness releases control and the 7 centers remain? Continue to work without your help, without your oversight. Simply, they live. About this, a little further, very soon, when everything falls silent except the most quiet. And at the very end, the simplest and the deepest, what it means to fall asleep with this knowledge. Late hour, dark, quiet. You lie here, and this is all that is needed now. Nowhere to go, nothing to do. Simply be here, in this room, in this bed, in this body. 7 gates. We visited them for a long time. We spoke about ancient texts, about 3 rivers beneath the skin, about earth and water, about fire and wind, about ether and light, about the thousand-petaled summit where words disappear. Now, there is no need to remember anything. Now, simply allow the body to know what it already knows. Feel your feet. They rest on the sheet. Cool fabric. The warmth that gradually accumulates between the body and the bed. The soles of the feet. The lowest contact. The very first touch of the earth that you had today. And the last. Here, the lowest of the 7. Muladhara, root, foundation. What holds? Feel this support. Do not think about it. Simply notice. There is a sensation of weight. There is a sensation of place. You are here, precisely here, nowhere else. Now, the belly, warm, a little heavy. The breath moves it slightly, up and down, up and down. This is Svadhisthana, one's own dwelling, the place that holds something most yours, something fluid and alive. There is no need to touch it. Simply feel this warmth. It was with you all day. It will be with you all night. Higher, the upper belly, where the ribs spread to the sides, where the breath is deepest. This place opens a little on the in-breath and settles calmly on the out-breath. Manipura, the inner sun. Today it did its work. It digested the day, all its noise, all its effort. Now it rests, and you rest with it. Breathe slowly. Let this center cool, like embers after a long evening. The chest, the most quiet movement, barely noticeable. The heart beats somewhere inside, evenly, without haste. Anahata, unstruck, the one that sounds without effort. This quiet sound has been with you your whole life. Not 1 second did it pause. Not in any of the days you remember and those you have forgotten. Simply feel this steady rhythm. This is the presence of the heart. It has nothing to prove. Let the chest become a little softer, as if something that had been held all day releases. Just a little. This is enough. The throat relaxed. The tongue rests calmly. The lips are slightly parted or closed. It does not matter. Vishuddha. Everything that needed to be said today was said. Everything that was not said will wait. The throat is now silent, and this silence is also a voice, quiet, honest. Sometimes the most truthful thing is simply to fall quiet and let the night speak for you. The forehead, between the brows, a little warmer, a little deeper. This is the place where thoughts gathered into knots throughout the day. Now they are dispersing. Ajna. It is not looking at anything. It is simply open. Like the sky that looks nowhere, yet in which everything is reflected. There is nothing to see. Simply allow this point between the brows to become soft, as if someone very quietly placed a palm there and removed it, and the warmth remained. The crown, the very highest point, always a little cool there, where the air touches the hair. Sahasrara, the 1,000-petaled, the one spoken of as beyond words. And now it is beyond words, simply quiet, open, like a summit that need not be conquered. It is enough to know it is there. 7, all 7 in their place, all alive, all doing their quiet work as you fall asleep. They do not need your attention to work. They work always, even now, as the eyelids grow heavy, even in the moment when thoughts become blurred, like reflections in water before the wind, even in sleep. Especially in sleep. This is what the ancient texts said about sleep. That in it, life goes inward. that the 7 centers do not go dark. They withdraw into themselves. Like a fire covered with a palm, it has not gone out. It is simply quieter. Imagine a temple, a large one, with many halls, each hall different. In one, the smell of earth and stone. In another, the quiet sound of water in a dark pool. In the third, the hot air above a small fire. In the fourth, a flower opening in the darkness. In the fifth, a sound heard only in complete silence. In the sixth, a light that comes from nowhere. In the seventh, nothing, only open space extending upward. You walk through these halls, slowly, with a lantern. You look into each one. You see that everything is in place, that nothing needs fixing, nothing needs changing, and you quietly close the door behind yourself. One hall, door closed. Dark. The second, dark. The third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, the seventh, and you yourself become the silence of this temple. The chakras are not a goal, not a task, not something that needs to be opened or repaired. They are a map of the home you already live in. You have always lived in it. Only now you know its halls a little better. Somewhere ahead, on other nights, we will meet again. There will be a conversation about bhakti, about the path of the heart, about love that is itself a road. There will be a conversation about Svara Yoga, about the subtle science of breath, about how Ida and Pingala breathe in turn, and what this means for the mind. And there will be a conversation about Yoga Nidra, about that special state at the boundary of sleep, where these 7 centers are visited by attention, like a lantern in a dark temple. But this is later. This is for another evening. For now, only you and this silence. The feet are warm. The belly is calm. The breath is even. The chest is soft. The throat is silent. The forehead is relaxed. The crown cool, quiet, open. 7. All 7 here. You are home. Sleep peacefully until we meet again.